Now we are going to have a conversation with Eric Leichner. He is the Emergency Management Director for ADRA Australia, and he's going to be sharing with us a little bit about what ADRA is doing around the world in that sphere of disaster responses, but also we're particularly interested to see what's happening in Lebanon and Syria, especially with the current conflict in the Middle East between Israel, the United States, and Iran and Lebanon. Eric, good morning to you. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Good morning, Scafi. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Eric, let's start with ADRA. So what kind of ADRA, you're in the emergency response department, talking about, looking after people when they are struck by natural and man-made disasters. What are some of the situations that ADRA is currently helping around the world?
We currently have 16 different interventions and projects, which includes responses to recent cyclones here in the Pacific, Cyclone Mila and Cyclone Baiano, that affected PNG, Solomon Islands, and Fiji. So we're supporting there. We currently have also recovery activities in Victoria after the bushfires that we had earlier this summer. And we continue to support in Ukraine after more than 4 years of that conflict. We also have responses active there. And of course, as you mentioned, we are very active in the Middle East crisis now. ADRA has teams on the ground in Lebanon and Syria. So a lot of things going on and quite active in that space.
Yes, absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about the Middle East, in particular with Syria and Lebanon. What is the situation there? What's the history? How do we track back the history of their humanitarian needs in these two countries?
Let me try to illustrate a little bit of that with a story. Recently, our team in Lebanon was doing a distribution in some of the shelters that had been set up, and they encountered a man named, we'll call him Hassan, and he is an older man from the south of Lebanon, from Nabati. And when our team approached him, he was hesitant at first, but then started to open up, and he said, look, I've been here in 2006. I've been here again in 2023. I've been here again in 2024. And I'm back here again in 2026. He had returned to the south, trying to look for his home after the last ceasefire, but everything was just rubble. He couldn't even identify where his house used to be. And so he tried to restart his life again, renting now in Beirut. And now these displacement orders come as part of this escalation of the conflict. And so he's back again in one of these public shelters. And what was shocking for our team when they were discussing and talking to him was what he said at the end, which he said, for me, I have given up dreaming for my life. But I still hope for my children and grandchildren. Even if it means staying in a shelter like this, in these conditions, I would accept that for them if they don't have to live the life that I have lived. Unfortunately, that is a very good summary of the situation in Lebanon right now. There are over 1.2 million people that are currently displaced. That is roughly 20% of the entire country. And only 10% of those, so around 120,000, have an actual place to stay, which are, collective shelters in mosques, churches, schools. But most of them are having to stay on the street or with some relative or friend, many times having to share a toilet between 50 to 100 people. And families that attempt to return, like the story of Hassan, will find destroyed homes, lack of water, lack of health facilities or medical services. Children are missing school because schools are being used for public shelters. experiencing anxiety, trauma. So it's a very complex and tough situation that has been happening for a very long time. Many of the people that are in Lebanon now are actually refugees from Syria that have been fleeing that other conflict a couple of years ago only. And now many of them are trying to return back to Syria, to a country that is destroyed by conflict, because they're not safe anymore in Lebanon. And ADRA is supporting the people in collective shelters, is helping those on the streets as well, providing meals and bedding supplies, hygiene kits, and even cash assistance, which in these cases tends to be a very effective and flexible way for people to meet so many diverse needs that they have in this particular kind of context.
Wow. Eric, this is quite heartbreaking to talk to a person and say, you know what, I already gave up dreaming for my life. Imagine being in a situation that is so hopeless that you say, you know what, I'm not going to have a house. I'm just going to live in the streets or in these shelters with, depending on the mercy of others for all the days of my life for something that I haven't caused because, they haven't brought that upon themselves. And at least having hope in the next generation. If it wasn't for ADRA, I would imagine, and other organizations like ADRA that are really caring for them, it would be a 10 times worse humanitarian crisis because how would they have access to, as you mentioned, these basic things like hygiene kits or hot meals, bedding supplies, water, cash assistance for these things. Have you traveled to those regions personally, Eric? Have you been there yourself, or you're managing from here from Australia only?
I haven't been to Lebanon specifically. I've been to Ukraine when the conflict started. We have as ADRA a big investment in an effort and time in preparedness, and as part of that, we train a lot of professionals that are part of the ADRA network to be ready to be deployed to some of these cases. And so when the Ukraine conflict started, I had the chance to support our local team. So I've been in similar situations, but haven't been specifically supporting directly on the ground these particular contexts on Lebanon and Syria.
So how do you train in these volunteers and these workers that are volunteering or working for ADRA overseas? What kind of training do they receive to help them be ready for disaster? Because surely you cannot start training after disaster strikes, can you?
Yeah, no, it's an important part of what we do, and it's many times something that goes unnoticed. But for us to be ready to respond to so many different things as they happen and be ready to be quickly on the ground, ADRA has a long history of heavy investment of time and effort in making sure we have that capacity. And I would say that capacity and that investment starts, first of all, with our country offices, with the local offices. As much as possible, we always try for that capacity to be local. Trying to or having to deploy people to support, that's an additional measure that we put in place. But as much as possible, we try local offices to have as much capacity as possible. And so we do have every country office that is part of the ADRA network, which is over 100 countries, 110 countries, have a plan. It's a very detailed plan that is written specifically for the context they are in and accounts for local risks and also for what the government can do locally and what communities tend to need the most, what is their vulnerability. And so when disaster strikes, we're not trying to figure out what to do, but we already have plans in place and their roles are very clear and there's funding that goes with that. So everything is in place for that. But then comes the training. So we have this training at different levels. So we have training at the global level, which was the one that I was explaining before. It's global and regional. So we can move people from one place to the other to support, to serve as that surge capacity when needed. And those trainings are quite intense. They can take 7 to 10 days. They include a simulation exercise in the community where we simulate a real crisis, a real emergency. And some of them, shorter ones, have what we call tabletop exercises. So these are simulations, but only in the training room, to try to test our systems, test our mechanisms, and make sure that we're ready for that.
Yes,
that happens at all those levels.
Because I imagine that you definitely need to do some test drives before it, because on the day everything that can go wrong will go wrong. So you need to really test and make sure. So what is the coolest?
Wrong, yes. So plans don't always play out exactly the same way. So we always have to have alternative plans in place as well, and be able to have the flexibility to maneuver.
Eric, can you share with me like one of perhaps the coolest stories or a memorable story of one of these trainings that you've done, that like maybe because of the realism or because of the complexity of the situation? Can you transport us just for a quick second here? I really want to be in that room with all the volunteers and really thinking, putting my brains, applying my imagination, creativity to how can we help people in disaster? Is there, like you mentioned that you run scenarios? Can you run us through like how it works like in practice? Like give us an example.
Sure. Yes. While you were talking, I was remembering we were doing one of these trainings in Colombia a couple of years ago, and we, as part of that process, there is a lot of work that goes into talking with the community, because the community knows that we're going to be running that exercise. Many of the community members, which have been affected by a similar situation in the past, they know what they're talking about. They will be talking with our volunteers or the staff we're training, and they will be going through a script, but they're talking about their own reality as well. And so we make sure that the community is on board. We make sure that everyone else is on board. So all the authorities, police, medical services, everyone in the community knows this is happening. And so we were testing a security incident. So our teams will be on the ground. They will be doing what we call a needs assessment, where it's basically trying to understand what are the actual needs people have. That is a very critical element of our work, to make sure that we direct resources to their most pressing needs. And while they were conducting this needs assessment in the field, there will be a security incident. They will be approached by people that wanted to rob them. And community knew that. Everyone was aware, the police knew, everything was fine. But then, because it became so real, as part of that testing, people were so much into the role that they were playing. Community members started to think, well, is this really a simulation, or is there something happening here? Maybe we should call the police. And so they actually called the police. And the police said, well, we know that there's an exercise happening there. And the guys told us that that would be happening, but maybe this is real. And so we ended up having the real police show up and try to detain some of our actors as part of that process. But yeah, that's how much it can actually become an very realistic simulation of conditions that we do find on the ground. And it's a safe environment. We have psychologists that are there to support anyone that feels overwhelmed by the situation. So everything is accounted for, but still, it can be shocking. It can be difficult for many people.
Yeah, wow. There you go, Elliot. So imagine impersonating a robber so well that people actually call the police, and even though the police knows this is a simulation, it's like, the simulation is looking a bit too real. Eric, how can people learn more about ADRA's disaster response, or even support ADRA's work in times of disaster? What can we do? Particularly, there's a lot of young men that comes to me in particular saying, hey, we want to do something where we can be useful, but we need to see action. We need to be able to be at the eye of the hurricane, and so that we can help other people. How can they do that?
I would encourage them to go to our website. So that's adra.org.au/disaster. There they'll be able to see some of the current responses we're running and get a bit more information of what ADRA is doing. While there, we have in our website a place where they can actually register for volunteering, and we always need people that are willing to support responses. We are more active now in trying to respond to disasters within Australia. So definitely, if people are listening to us and would like to be part of that in the future, please express your interest there. Donations, of course, resources are always important for us. We're trying to do as much as we can to cover, almost unlimited needs with very limited resources. So donations to help support the increasing number of disasters and conflicts we have are always welcome. And even if it's not volunteering or donating, prayers for the people that are affected by so many of these disasters around the world, and prayer for our teams as well that struggle as well to try to bring a little bit of relief and hope for those affected.
Amazing. Message is being given, adra.org.au/disasters. Thank you very much, Eric, the Emergency Management Director for ADRA Australia. Thanks for sharing with us this incredible work that ADRA is doing, not only in Australia, but worldwide, trying to bring hope to those who have lost hope because of disaster.